is going on now?
Well, I might have upset them.
What'd you do?
I told them that we were going to be watching Godzilla vs. Kong when really we're watching Kong vs. Godzilla.
Oy vey.
Okay, what is happening here?
Where are we?
Glix, give us a situation report.
Currently, we are on the planet Geekery. Be warned, our impossibility drive may cause distortions as we traverse this land. Impending impossibility engaging in 3,
Oh, gosh.
2, 1.
Hello, Devoted Geeks. Welcome to Con Talk, the podcast extension of Geek Devotions, a show from Devoted Geeks who are devoted to letting you know that you are loved. I'm Dallas, and this is episode 93 of Geek Devotions. I'm excited. This is my beautiful wife, Celeste. Say hi, Celeste.
Hello. We have angry kaiju.
We do have angry kaiju. And not because we didn't feed them tacos, because we've been doing that pretty steadily.
We do.
But
We
somebody
feed
said
them
the
a
wrong
steady
film.
diet of tacos.
So, why are they angry, Celeste?
I told them the wrong thing because I get them mixed up. They should have come up with a more original name.
It's a true story. So what are we talking about today?
Today we are talking... Ooh, which one are we talking about? Today we're talking about King Kong versus Godzilla, which is clearly from some point in the 60s.
Yes, 1963, actually. And
where am I?
well, Josh.
Hi, Josh.
Well,
What's up, buddy?
I think your Glick's mixed up. I was just having a conversation about how awesome the violence of Steppenwolf was during the Snyder cut, and
Yeah.
now you're.
I
Well,
think
welcome.
she's still angry at us because of John.
Yeah. John's been messing with her. He's trying to fix her. I'm like, stop messing with our AI. I'm sorry, but welcome. Glad to have you here.
Oh, I'm glad to be here. I was hoping this film was going to be a few more days away, but it snuck up on me, much like the
It's been
lightning to King Kong.
Oh, true story. For those listening, if you're a longtime listener, you're familiar with this voice. If you're not, this, ladies and gentlemen, is Josh Burkey of Victims and Villains. Josh, introduce yourself to the crowd. Who are you?
I go by the alias Captain Nostalgia, and I am the head of the nonprofit / podcast Victims and Villains. We are we create content that educates and engages individuals on mental health awareness and suicide prevention through pop culture. And as I said when Glix first dropped me off here, our content this week is focusing all on the Snyder Cut. And my wife and I have the privilege of doing a ministry that is in the same vein as well.
Awesome. So glad to have you here. I encourage everybody to check out victimsandvillains.net. Josh, I believe at the time of this recording, you just put out a podcast about the Snyder Cut.
Part 1. We have part 2 coming out Friday.
Ooh. So I encourage you guys to go check him out. He does reviews, all kinds of stuff. I've had the blessing to be able to write for him a couple times, and he's done some stuff for us over here. If you're interested in Snyder, we're not talking about the Snyder Cut on here, but if you're interested in it, check him out. I do have a spoiler-free review on our website, but his is probably better.
If it's spoiler-free.
So our written review is spoiler free.
Gotcha.
Our 2-part podcast is in depth, spoiler filled.
Not spoiler free.
I'm just gonna throw my voice in there. It was much better than the original one.
Yeah, I'm gonna echo the same, and I really appreciate your guys' synoptic gospel video with the Snyder Cut.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Well, speaking of Snyder Cut, we are kind of reviewing the Snyder Cut version of King Kong vs. Godzilla because this film was chopped and screwed for the American audiences, and the American version was there's so much context missing from the American version,
So
and
bad.
things are mixed around. It's awkward to watch at times. But so for the purposes of today's conversation, we're going to be talking about the Japanese version, which you can find in some various notoriously places. If you can find it on VHS somewhere, that's great.
If you can find somewhere to play the VHS, that's even better.
If you can't, talk to Captain Nostalgia, because he's gotten into apparently VHS collecting is a thing. Like, it's a whole subculture now.
It's the next step from the records.
So for those who are listening, Josh just pulled out a VHS of Spice World, Ghosts, and he's just putting all kinds of VHS out.
X-Files.
That's not even open.
I know, it's beautiful.
Still has a Kroger brand logo on it.
Apparently, you paid $14 for that.
I paid 50 cents for that.
Nice.
That's how much it was originally.
Somebody paid $14 for that.
So, anyways, guys, we're going to be talking about the Japanese version of this film. So maybe you're listening to it today and you're like, man, I don't remember what any of these things are talking about. That's probably because you only saw the American version. The Japanese version did come out. I will say this. There is a better version of the Japanese version out there as far as quality from what Celeste and I watched and probably what Captain Nostalgia watched. Japan, from my understanding, when they released it for the Criterion Collection, which is how Celeste and I watched it, they didn't get the very best prints for it. But apparently there is a cut that's out there, not a cut, but a version out there that's cleaned up and looks a little bit higher quality, maybe a little less jumpy. And if you find that, I would love to know how you found it, and because that's cool.
Or maybe we don't want to know.
True story. Well, let's get into this, guys. Let's talk about this film. I'm going to jump over to the IMDb and look at the description that's on IMDb about it. Which, interestingly enough, the first description is about the English version, not the Japanese one. So I had to scroll down a little bit. Yeah, exactly. Mr. Taco, like this already, the producer of a low-rated television show called Mysteries of the World, decides his show needs some spicing up. So he sends two of his staff, Osamu Sakuri and Kinsuburo Fury, I'm terrible at these names, I apologize, to Faroe Island to bring back some berries called soma, noted for their non-addictive narcotic effect. He also wanted the two to bring back proof of a giant ape named King Kong.
Ba, ba, ba.
Exactly. As this is going on, a submarine collides with an iceberg, releasing Godzilla, who was trapped there 7 years earlier. When Osamu and Kinsuburo arrived at Faroe, they not only find the berries, but the giant ape. After a battle with a giant octopus, Kong drinks some juice and drinks the juice made from the berries and falls asleep. While he is sleeping, the pair tie him to a raft and bring him to Japan. In the meantime, Godzilla is rampaging through Japanese countryside. While en route to Japan, Kong breaks free and swims toward Japan, and inevitably on a collision course with Godzilla. And that's the synopsis, the quick read of this film. And just some fun facts. This was like the highest grossing Showa era Godzilla film.
Shocking. So shocking.
So I want to say this is the third entry in the Godzilla franchise.
This is actually the third film for both Kong and Godzilla.
Oh, nice.
I didn't realize there was a third one for Kong also.
Yeah, so Kong had King Kong in 1933, and then that same year they did a Frankenstein sequel called Son of Kong, and then he lied dormant for 30 years, and I don't know if you're going to get into this or not, but like how this movie kind of came to be, it was basically a producer wanting to take advantage of the recent popularity and decline of RKO pictures who owned King Kong at the time.
Absolutely. Actually, I'm glad you got into it because that's some of the stuff you got to kind of know going into the film a little bit. Like, this is a sequel film to Godzilla Raids Again, which at the end of that film, Godzilla was trapped, buried in ice, which is where we pick up with him in this film. Now, I am told, and maybe Josh, you've read differently, this is not the same Kong as the original ones from the 30. He's called King Kong, but he's written very differently. He's much bigger than the original Kong, and but for all intents and purposes, this is Kong. This is also a controversial type of film because of the fact that the scriptwriter, the guy who actually worked on it in the first place, his stuff was taken because originally it was supposed to be King Kong versus Frankenstein. And then the script got jacked and sold to Japan and was reworked. And Toho greenlit this. And there was actually almost a lawsuit about this film at one point in time.
I believe it.
Well, there's even things that happen in this film that they took were in the original Frankenstein versus Kong idea and just never changed. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure when we get into like spoilers, we'll talk about that. But because I was so curious about like what was with this ending, and then like I looked into it and it's like, oh, they just never changed that. Okay,
right. Yep. So it's an interesting film. So like our description said on the front end, we are dealing with a company that is out to make money in a most ridiculous type of fashion by kidnapping a giant ape, basically. And as he comes ashore, he has to deal with Godzilla. And Godzilla has just escaped from that little ice encapsulation that took place in the previous film. And there's a scene with a guy that says that Godzilla will surely come ashore because he's got like this internal homing tracking thing coming about him that, you know, this is his home. This is his stomping grounds in Japan. Celeste. And which I think reinforces the mindset of that Godzilla is an animalistic force of nature that is just inevitable for the people of Japan. Definitely, again, Godzilla holds a very special place in the minds and hearts of the Japanese, especially in this time period, because of what he represents. Now, this is 63, so this is 20 years after Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys who have listened to our podcast before, we talked about the fact that he really does represent the atomic bomb and the effects of the bomb. He represents their hopes, and he represents their darker side, their disastrous side of who they are, of what had happened in Japan through the Japanese during World War II. So there's a lot happening here with him. Kong now entering the picture, and he's I don't know how to describe what his character really is.
A rug? Kind of looks like a rug that needs to be washed.
A little bit. You right there, Josh?
yeah, especially whenever he gets wet and then Godzilla hits him with the atomic breath.
Right?
Yeah, that was not a good look.
Oh my gosh. So, but Kong certainly, like, he just seems like he's being forced into this.
Mm-hmm. He tried to say no, sucker, and they didn't let him.
So in the American version of this, there's actually a line where they said that they're talking about this fight between Godzilla and Kong, that Kong would surely win because Godzilla's just a dumb animal, whereas Kong is a thinking animal. Did you guys feel like in the Japanese version that it played out that way?
I'm gonna say no. I almost feel like the Japanese version was making more fun of Kong and playing more to Godzilla.
Mm-hmm.
Well, sure, because Godzilla was a Japanese creation, born and bred. Like, it was a cultural phenomenon over there, and so much as I'm sure we'll get into talking about the differences between the Japanese version and the English version come from just the different cultural barriers between the two cultures. But to your point, Dallas, I think that yes.
all that to say yes.
Very much so.
Right.
Very much so. And again, I think that's just a difference in the culture. And one of the things that I've found that's kind of cool, humorous about this movie is that most people think that because there's two different versions at the end, it's now been like a long fabled where you have like a version, the American version, Kong wins, and then in the Japanese version, Godzilla wins.
Right.
When in reality, it's mutual destruction.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That is a running, like, it's so ingrained in the minds of people that's how that happened. There's actually magazine articles that have been published in the past that say that. What was it? Trivia Pursuit.
Yeah.
They have that false fact. It was false news before there was false news, but they have that fact within Trivial Pursuit.
It's the Mandela effect.
Yeah.
It really, it really is, man. And so we have two different versions, but I don't know. This is kind of where we're at with who they are. I think this is one of those fights that everyone was kind of wanting. Like when you look at monster verses across the world, like what other monster really represents America? Like I can't think of any other one.
I feel like that might be a loaded question.
Boy,
what cinematic monster creature?
it also depends on how you define creature and when you define monster as well, because when you look at the time period that the original King Kong came out, 1933, you have the rise of the Universal monsters.
Yeah.
So you have, the Mummy, you have Dracula, you have Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein, Creature from the Black Lagoon, The Invisible Man, and all of them eventually in the 40s and 50s ended up doing their own crossovers.
Right.
So, America by this point in the 60s has had many different iconic creatures, so to say, that have graced the screen. So I don't think that there's ever been one that's truly ever represented the United States of America. Whereas, Japanese, you can instantly just talk to anyone that has never seen a Godzilla, or at the very least has only ever seen like the Americanized versions of Godzilla, and says, that is Japan's monster.
Right.
Yeah.
I can see that. At the same time, though, I mean, if you look back, like, I feel like that Frankenstein and Dracula, they really represent European individuals, like the European mindset of creatures.
I don't know about Frankenstein so much. I mean, I know he was created in Europe. He technically is a European monster, but he is not necessarily specifically European. So that's all I have to say about that.
Right, but of course, Mary Shelley, who wrote him, was from the UK.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of where I'm thinking from. But, it works. So we have this matchup between the two, Godzilla versus Kong. And it's the 60s. Can we just say that? It's the 60s all the way through.
Definitely the 60s.
Like, it's just from the filming style to the color was nice. But it was definitely it's a film, I think, that's really rooted in the 60s for a lot of reasons.
Well, I'm glad I got that little announcement for the board out of the way. I'm telling you, I'm getting really tired of doing these hourly announcements. It's so annoying, but the board has mandated what the board has mandated, Jimmy. Exactly. And at this point, I like staying terrestrial. However, I do like the fact that we've pre-recorded a few of them so I don't have to get up constantly in the middle of the night and make these announcements because I like sleeping. You'll sleep when you're dead? Yeah. I've heard plenty of people say that. Also, weren't you dead once already? You got better, of course. One of these days you're going to tell me how you did that. But right now, I need to start prepping my notes to go on Retro Rewind. Well, I should say both of us are going to be going on Retro Rewind to talk about Monkey Lizard Punchy Punchy. Yes, that's my little nickname for it, as opposed to Lizard Monkey Punchy Punchy. See, the thing that I really appreciate, though, is that we're going to be talking about the Japanese version, and not enough people outside of Japan have seen the Japanese version. I know, it's difficult to get your hands on it unless you buy the Criterion set, which got some middling reviews from the fandom, unfortunately. But the thing that most people don't realize, you have to remember, Jimmy, is that that movie's actually a satire. Specifically, it's a satire of commercialism, because at that point, Japan was experiencing the Japanese economic miracle, and their economy was booming, and people were getting televisions. And so that's why you have things in this movie like the bubblegum commercial that we see being filmed early on in the movie from one of our heroes because he can play drums, which is something that comes back later in the movie. And then there was the TV show that's supposed to be talking about earth science, and instead they're talking about the world is about to end, and then they suddenly, the host comes in, Japanese Mr. Science, Mr. Wizard or whatever comes in, and he's all, oh, well, that's something that actually could happen but hasn't. And then don't get me started on Mr. Taco and how he's trying to get Kong so he could promote Pacific Pharmaceuticals more with Kong as a mascot. And then when Godzilla shows up and he's got the monkey, he's all, oh, there's marquee value with this. There's even a meta joke about somebody making a movie about this. And they treat the whole thing like it's a pro wrestling match. I mean, the whole thing is a giant send-up, giant parody of things like commercialism at that point, which was a very apt thing at the time. Heck, it is still apt now. I mean, we've seen stuff like this be satirized a whole bunch ever since then. I mean, haven't you seen the original RoboCop? Yes, I know, you love that movie. But anyway, as I was saying, hold on. Are you broadcasting this out still? You forgot to hit the off button? Oh, boy. I can only imagine who may have heard this. Exactly. As long as it's not the board, I think we'll be okay.
Well, that was awkward. I hope we weren't supposed to hear that transmission from Nathan. But it does bring up some interesting conversational pieces about this film, though.
It does.
Like I said, it was the 60s. In Japan, the 60s was a booming place. It was happening. There was a lot of growth happening there. And so taking what Nathan has said, what are your guys' thoughts about how that plays out, the commercialism and just the flamboyant way that TV production and advertisers just went out of control for advertising's sake back in the 60s in Japan within this movie?
So it was an interesting side of things, I think, because without that knowledge, it just looks like they're being ridiculous, which is pretty classic Japan as far as we're concerned. Like, I mean, just watch any not super serious anime, and you're going to see that one character that you're like, dear Lord, what's happening to their brain? So that's that you have those tropes, and then you kind of see the beginning of those tropes.
I can kind of see that.
For me, I think it's one of the very redeeming qualities of this movie. Mm-hmm. Like, we get dropped in as an audience at Pacific Pharmaceuticals, and you follow them until, I mean, you go back and forth a little bit to like hints of Godzilla, but you never really meet Godzilla until like almost the third act. Mm-hmm. And to me, I feel like I loved that world so much greater. And I think that they, even for it being as campy as it is, they were very clever in the way that they were doing it, because and that's still on brand for who Godzilla was, because, you know, Godzilla was nothing more than a satire or a commentary, however you define it, on nuclear war. So it makes sense that, you know, they're like, all right, we're going to use this platform to talk about X, and we're going to bring back King Kong because this was his, you know, introduction to the kaiju. Well, I can't say that because He technically, fun fact, I learned this today.
Yeah.
The very first kaiju film was a short film that played right before the original King Kong.
Wow.
And it was Kong Goes to Japan or something like that.
Oh.
Really?
Yeah, and it was produced by RKO Pictures, and but this was kind of the first time that you had ever really seen him in like a full scale thing, and he's also coming off of because RKO went bust, who owned King Kong, all of his movies basically, well, the two that he had out, they just were public domain and they just played them around the clock all the time. So it makes sense that you're using a now cultural icon to sell your commercialism and kind of comment and talk about the ridiculous nature of just how far people will go to sell a product.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You definitely see it all the way through. Also, just the ridiculousness that they went to sell that product. I was reading something today, and it's talking about how in this time frame, there's even like there was literally rating wars going on in Japan at this time, where one production company was fighting with another one over the ratings, and they would do these outlandish things to get people to come look and watch. And I think Celeste said, like, it really did, I think, help establish some tropes that we see today within Japanese cinema, or Japanese television at least, where it's super bright, it's flamboyant, it's like, oh, this is that, and there's a lot that's taking place. There was a story I read, though, that said that, like, it's even rumored that there was an elderly couple that was so taken back by the flamboyant, just ridiculousness that they did on television that somebody actually died. Like, there was this elderly couple that just, their hearts gave out from what was shown on the television. And the production companies just didn't care about those rumors. They're like, we're selling a product. We're trying to get out there and we're trying to do this stuff. And that really was kind of what was happening in this film. You have Mr. Taco, and like, he just didn't care. Like, don't blow up Godzilla. I want to keep him.
You mean Kong?
Yeah,
Kong. Sorry. It's like he was pushing the entire time throughout the entire film to get Kong on land and to push him out in front of everybody to make money off of him. There was even I remember the line he was talking about how he's like, what do you think the headline would be? Is, Kong holding a handful of Pacific Pharmaceuticals saying, I beat Godzilla before I take my pharmaceutical drugs. And it's like, after, yeah. And so, I mean, it's all wrapped around this whole commercialism idea. We're pushing a product no matter what. I think I've talked about this with Josh before. There's a film that I saw on Netflix years ago. I can't find it, called Branded. I think it was a Russian film, maybe. And super weird, super fascinating, but kind of along the same route of talking about how powerful branding is and marketing is, and how it controls the lives of individuals, not caring the effect of the lives of the individual.
Morgan Spurlock did being the documentarian behind Super Size Me, did a movie similar to that called The Greatest Movie Ever Sold. And it's a fascinating documentary. I if you can find it, I think it's streaming on like Amazon and stuff like that. But yeah, people just don't care. I mean, we always put, the dollar first.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And again, like I said, you see this play out in this film all the way through.
Side note, Branded, you can watch on Amazon Prime, YouTube, Google, and Vudu.
I might check it out later. So, now, here's one aspect of it. At the end of the film, I forgot who it was that they're talking to now. He says they're watching King Kong swim away back to his island, and they're all like, what the heck, and like, they're thankful for him for defeating Godzilla. And the guy goes, perhaps we should be like him and learning to adapt no matter our surroundings or our environment. And I've been pondering that line because, again, Hondo, the guy who did the film, he was very intentional about his messaging. And he said very clearly, this is a very much an anti-commercialism and things that were taking place. I forgot one more fact that I learned today, that there was actually a reporter our commentators at the time, and they said that they were so against what was going on. They would say that televisions were raising 100,000 idiots a day.
Oof.
Hondo did respond to that. He said, I don't think it is. I just don't think that television cares about their viewers. I think it's raising 10,000, 100,000 idiots, but it doesn't care about the viewers itself. But I'm trying to figure out where this line of perhaps we should be like Kong and learn to adapt no matter where we're at, how that plays into the greater theme of commercialism. You guys have any thoughts on how that might play out at all?
Well, it might have been that he was saying that while the commercialism is terrible, you have to adapt to your surroundings. Mm-hmm. So, these things are ridiculous and terrible, but if we kind of adapt to it, maybe we could change it. I don't know. I'm stretching there.
What do you think, Josh?
Yeah, I honestly don't know. I mean, in terms of like commercialism, I think that, it speaks very, very deeply to like challenge the viewer in like other aspects, but I feel like it's really stretching, like Celeste was saying, to like connect the two to consumerism. Right.
I don't know. Maybe some of you are listening. Maybe you have an answer for us. Maybe you can tell us where that line plays into the greater theme of the film. Now, there was a lot of stretching in this film. There were a lot of changes that took place in this film. There was a lot of ridiculousness that took place in this film.
Yes.
This is the first film that started the quote-unquote super ridiculousness that is almost stereotyped within these in Godzilla films, and specifically in the Showa era of Godzilla films. And Godzilla Raids Again, it was the first time you saw Godzilla fight another monster, another kaiju. And it's very much this animalistic, raw fighting thing. But in this film, they are quite literally emulating, like this is what they purposely did this, emulated pro wrestling for the fight scenes between Godzilla and Kong.
Oh, yeah.
Right down to, like, I'm flexing. Like, come at me, bro.
It's just waiting for somebody to go plus ultra.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah. Look like you have something to say, Josh.
Man, I don't know what wrestling was like in the 60s, and I'm not a wrestling fan in 2021.
Right.
But, man, I grew up, like, watching, like, WWF back when that was still a thing.
Right.
And I was a lot more entertained by that stuff. And that looks more real to me than 1962's King Kong versus Godzilla, because...
But they were missing the giant rubber suits, Josh. That's the problem.
Those rubber suits don't even look like they fit right. It looks like they had like 6 inches of just like plywood that they're like, just use your arm. They look like they... That's another thing. We can get into that a little bit later.
That's
well, let me ask you, these fight scenes, does it help that the director, the guy who was directing everything, he specifically was forcing them to make things so it was more kid friendly. Like they wanted they wanted kids to see this and laugh and enjoy the film. Does that help to give excuse to let's flip Godzilla over our shoulder fight scenes?
Yeah.
No. But it helps give context, because it would make sense, because again, going back to all of like kids, I don't know if it was like this in Japan, but like in America at that time, they were playing King Kong and Son of Kong constantly. Right. And Son of Kong is a very campy movie.
Oh, is it?
So like it makes sense that they're trying to appeal to that wider demographic, because you have both of those films going that way, and it looks like Godzilla wore the family-friendly crown for quite a long time.
Yeah, a little bit.
Those are the movies Celeste won't watch.
God bless you.
I watch them by myself.
Yes, he does.
All right. So, guys, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to talk about some of the things we liked about King Kong vs. Godzilla, some of the things we didn't like about it, and whether or not we can recommend this movie to other individuals. So, see you guys right after this break.
Welcome to Victims and Villains. This is the channel where we talk nerd, we talk hope, and we speak nothing else. I'm your host, Captain Nostalgia, and I'm so glad that you are here to join us.
Victims and Villains is a podcast and YouTube channel that marries pop culture and suicide prevention, producing content with the intent to let people know that there is hope and that there is a better way, and that each and every listener has value and worth.
Listen to Victims and Villains on your favorite podcast catcher or on YouTube by searching for Victims and Villains. Also, check out their website, victimsandvillains.net.
And we are back. As you know, we definitely support Victims and Villains, hence the reason Josh is here with us.
That's the only reason. I thought we were friends.
No, we would be friends even if you didn't do Victims and Villains. It might have taken us longer to find you, but we would still be friends. So
This is a true story.
This is true. This is fair.
Hey, how can people find you real quick?
Yeah.
Victimsandvillains.net is where you guys can find links to our main podcast catchers, being Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all of our social media, past episodes, movie reviews, and most importantly, our mental health resource library.
Yes. So go check out their website. It's pretty slick looking. I like it. Check out their stuff. I listen to the podcast when you cover things that I watch or have watched. So
yeah, we're pretty all over the place. So there's
you
that.
are, and then you hit the things because I have weird standards. So you hit things where I'm like, no, I'm good. That's okay. It's for other people. So, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about Kong versus Godzilla. I keep mixing it up. I need them to be more original. Okay. So we're going to talk about what we liked, what we didn't like, and if we can recommend this film. So, Josh, what is something that you liked?
The credits rolling.
No. That doesn't count, sir.
I had to put it somewhere just to get under Dallas's skin. I would say for me, I really enjoyed the consumerism message that we were just talking about. It is one of the highest highlights for me of this movie. I don't know if you guys want me to give a second one, but that's my first one. So
yeah,
right, cool. I can tell you, I enjoyed that also. I know that these Godzilla films aren't the greatest films, but like, I know these things. Like, there's this part of me that's like, I don't care. It's fun, you know?
Yeah, they are fun.
I will enjoy stuff that's dumb, but it'd be fun, though. However, I do appreciate that through almost every single Godzilla film, there is a deeper conversation that's taking place. And, like, that's what draws me to these films, me personally, is the deeper conversation that takes place in the midst of this ridiculousness that takes place also.
What was
I'm coming with you on that.
What was the message for Violente?
For Violente, it was a lot of, if I can just be blunt, tree huggery type of stuff.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay. Sorry, I was confused because it was just a giant plant in a lake. I was like, what the heck? Anyway, so I liked the human element storyline between the brother, the fiance, and the sister. That was,
Oh, yeah?
Josh is making faces, so I'm pretty sure he didn't care for that. I thought it was a more interesting story than watching Godzilla and King Kong beat each other up. There were definitely some parts of it that I'm like, oh, this is annoying. Like, just because everybody who listens to the podcast knows I detest weak, screaming women. So she annoyed the crap out of me later. But the overall storyline of that was a nice touch. And if you take into account that it's from the 60s, it's not a bad storyline.
Right.
Can I ask you something, being the only woman on this podcast?
Sure.
how would you feel if a man in a rubber ape suit kidnapped you?
It's a very specific question. I'm not saying that I wouldn't be freaking out, but I'm saying that these women, and it's the same thing that I had. Okay, we're going on a rant. Should we go on a rant? We're going on a rant. It's the same,
going rogue.
Same issue I had with Lois Lane and Superman. Don't just stand there and go, ah! Run. Take your heels off. Chunk the shoes at somebody. Like, just do something. Or just freeze, because that's a legitimate reaction. Just freeze and don't do anything. But this, like, she fell in the water out of the train, and she's like, you can see her, she's like trying to do bad Baywatch. And it's like, like, it's just like she's purposefully flinging the top of herself back. And you're like, that's not how you would fall in water. Take the friggin' shoes off. So, I'm done.
My wife is making the best references over the last couple of days. I'm going to brag on her for a second. Yesterday in Bible study,
oh gosh,
she was describing the way Jesus' love is. And she's like, it's like a Jesus burrito. You just feel warm and safe as he surrounds you. And then everyone who's in the Bible study just lost it. We were done.
For reference, it was we're the middle of a God burrito.
All right.
Because it's from Psalms. So it's pre-Christ. Although that does work because we are post-Christ. But anyway.
To your point, though, we had not reached that place culturally. So that is why women are depicted that way. And the 60s really, really bugged me about the depiction of women. The more invested that I get into certain mediums, and I don't think you reach that, unfortunately, until like the 90s or like the 2000s.
There was some of it going on in like the 70s in American cinema.
Because a couple of those ladies were Bond girls. Like, they were in James Bond films. And now I haven't seen all the James Bond films. Did you recognize them, Celeste, when we were watching the film?
I recognized the lady on the island who was a Bond girl. I can't place which one she was, but the rest of them must be. I'm only up to. I'm just past Sean Connery.
Well, the one on the island, I mean, she wasn't that stereotypical, like, oh, I'm helpless, like, until like there was the giant octopus, but like she was she had some sass to her.
She did.
She wasn't taking crap.
And I appreciated that. It was really the in the water scene that was bugging me, and I was just already irritated by the time she was in Godzilla's hand because of the previous scene. I was already like, ugh.
Right.
So
I get that.
That is my rant. we were talking about things we liked.
Right.
I apologize.
Well, for me, something I liked the blending of some. It wasn't always a hit, but some of the practical effects hit well for me at times. At times, Josh is like eating his whole fist because he hated it.
Remember the time frame, Josh. Remember the
time frame, the way that they were doing stuff. I appreciate the creativity they did to try to make things happen using the back projection, using some early green screening, mixed in with actual practical things that took place. Like that whole squid scene, while there was some ridiculousness going on, that was legitimately a live squid. And there were like 3 or 4.
Yeah, there was 3 of them. Two of them went back into the wild, and one of them was later turned into calamari.
Dinner!
Yeah, like after they finished filming. That's a legend, and I think they're keeping a legend because you can't get away with that today.
No.
So
PETA says no.
But like I appreciated that, like that whole practical sense, because they had to take the camera, take it off a tripod, put it on the ground to follow this octopus as it follows around. They had to use hot air to get it to move and to do certain things and act certain ways.
Like when it was angrily flapping the side of its head?
Yeah, pretty much. But I mean, that was legitimately a lot of work to make an effect because they didn't want to do the claymation, which they could have done. They could have done claymation. They did. There's one beautifully ridiculous, terrible scene where they did claymation, which was where Godzilla jumps up in the air and punches and kicks Kong in the chest with both feet.
Is that when that was?
Yes.
Okay.
It was gloriously terrible, and
That's one way to put it.
I would have preferred them to keep the claymation. I just watched King Kong tonight for the first time,
Right.
the original 33, and
Oh,
like the
man.
blending of like and listening to like how they created the effect of like the claymation and like the actual humans was just such ahead of its time.
yeah,
And so much of that claymation was like King Kong's identity at that time. This
right.
was the first time that he had ever been in like rubber suit, but also this is an adaptation, as we previously talked about.
Right, absolutely. And I'm with you. I would have liked to have that, but at the same time, I don't think they had the budget or the time frame to make this happen.
Yeah.
From my understanding of the way that films and production companies run in Japan, it is brisk, fast-paced. Like, there is no time to wait. They're getting this stuff out the door. So where they can cut corners, they cut corners.
Yeah.
And you're working faster so you can get more projects done, because the more projects done, the more you get paid. It doesn't matter how long you work. It's how much stuff you get done. And so, which leads to some terrible things, but at the same time, it leads to some ingenuity. Let's make things a little bit better.
Yeah.
So I appreciated that aspect, even to the miniatures, which again I know looks terrible when you compare it to other things. But if you were to look back at the history of Godzilla,
Yeah.
of the previous Godzilla films, and I'm trying to think, when did Mothra come out? Yeah, Mothra. Mothra was 1961.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even between 61's Mothra to this King Kong, I'm sorry, King Kong versus Godzilla in 63, the use of miniatures and the way the miniatures act and feel was leaps and bounds greater than what Toho had produced beforehand. Mm-hmm. So
They're constantly
again,
growing. I'll
Absolutely.
give them that.
and that's the thing is like, and this is where I probably come from a different perspective than Celeste and Josh here, because I've been watching these in sequential order. I had the opportunity to review Mothra for Josh, actually. Again, victimsandvillains.net, if you want to check out that the review of Mothra I did. It was the Mill Creek Still Box Collection. It's a beautiful collection. But because I've had the opportunity to watch these, I've had the opportunity to see the production company grow. And so I appreciate where they're at in this portion of where they're mixing real life elements with miniature work, with rear screen projection, with, well, I'm gonna be honest with you, the blue screen wasn't working for me, but they were
No.
trying.
They tried.
So that's what I liked about it. So, Josh, what's one more thing that you liked?
I'll say the acting. I didn't have any issues with the acting in here. Like Celeste was saying, like a lot of like the human storylines seem to work for me a lot more than King Kong or Godzilla. And I'll talk about that when we move into dislikes, because man, I have strong feelings. But yeah, I think the acting in this was fine, and like they did it is a lot of stuff that's going on, but it never feels like that's the issue that's going on with this film.
Right. I get that. Which is interesting. You guys are both speaking to an actual debate within the kaiju fandom, and that is the human plot lines. Like, it's highly debated whether or not they're needed. There's people who are like, look, man, the human plot lines are a major portion of it. They help you to connect to it. And there's some people who are like, I just want to see smashing animals. And so, which is a band that opened up for Smashing Pumpkins. And
Yes.
so it's interesting. You guys are definitely in the camp of the human plot line, which I'm with you. I enjoy the human plot line. I think that helps the viewer to experience these things in a different way.
Don't get me wrong. When it's done well, I don't mind seeing big explosions
Yeah, absolutely.
and things. I am a fan of the Transformers movies, even if the storylines are not the best. But because cars and shiny and pretty and boom. But without the human element, you lose a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, like not being like I've seen a lot of Godzilla movies. I've seen a lot of like these kaiju movies. I can't wait for Clifford the Big Red Dog, you know. But
that's another one that's debated.
On that front.
Anyways, I'm kidding. I could care less. But I think for me, like I'm with Celeste. Like I think when it's done well, I find myself really enjoying it. Like I know I'm gonna get a lot of crap from kaiju like hardcore fans. I enjoyed the 2014 Godzilla movie.
Yeah,
I think
we did too.
It has just enough Godzilla in it. All of the human elements invest me as a viewer, and then you're building up to the larger grand scale of the monsterverse that Legendary is creating.
Yeah.
That's what that was used for. And I think for me, like, I need to care about these characters because I'm always going to be a cinephile first and a kaiju watcher second.
Mm-hmm. I get that. Babe, how about you? What's your second thing?
Well, my second thing is that I thoroughly enjoyed the storyline. So like Josh was saying, the overall human element just was really, really good. Is it said Taco? Or is it
They say, I don't know. We'll call him Taco.
Okay. Which I think is funny because it means octopus in Japanese. So I thought that was a nice little play on words. Like
He was head of Pacific Pharmaceuticals, so
he was,
and he was slimy. He has hands and everything.
and he was attacking King Kong and making him do things he didn't want to do, like the one that got eaten for dinner. I mean, but yeah. So even him, as I'm not a huge fan of super ridiculous humor, but it was riding that line, his character of being super ridiculous, but being humorous in his super ridiculousness.
Yeah.
If he had gone any more ridiculous, I think I would have put him up there with the chick in the water.
I get that. So, mine, I'm going with you guys on this one. The whole human plot line. Actually, I like the deeper message and all that good stuff too. But the human plot line was definitely a big deal. I thought it helped the story go through. You get to experience it in a different way. I did find it funny that when what's his face went missing, and they're like, oh, his ship has disappeared. So homegirl runs off, and then he shows up the next day, and the girl's like, ah, and she drops the plate, and
Yeah, what was that food? Because it looked really good.
It looked like Jell-O to me. I don't really know.
I think there was chicken involved.
same.
So, but I appreciated the plot line, the human plot line. I think that they helped you go through. I appreciate the humor. Those guys that, the two guys specifically that went out there on the expedition. It's my understanding that they were like a known comedy duo. Like, this is what they do. Like, they're almost the Japanese Abbott and Costello. One was very much the straight man. The other one was the goofball. And so, I don't know, I appreciate it. It helped me to enjoy the film a little bit more. Because there were some things I disliked about the film that needed some help.
Help from being repressed.
My time to shine.
So, Josh is super excited. So we're going to go ahead and end the show today and leave it. No, Josh, what is something you disliked?
Man, we were talking about this last night after I got done watching it. And I got to say, like, tonally speaking, this movie has so much issues. Because when you go through the first 2/3 of this movie, it's very goofy, it's very slapsticky, and it's like a pharmaceutical company needing to, up their advertising game. So they're going to go and try and get King Kong. Cool. I like it. It's goofy. I'm here for it. Then you enter in Godzilla Awakes, and it's like all of a sudden, like, it just gets like really dark and serious. Mm-hmm. And it just kind of feels like any time that you have King Kong and Godzilla, like the story just like pivots away and focuses on one and goes to their tone, and then it tries to like go back and forth, and it just did not work for me.
Right. I get that. I really do. And I'm going to come fall. I understand the tonal shifting being distracting. Part of me wonders if that's the fact that they were just rewriting somebody else's script and plugging Godzilla in, and there's a preconceived mindset of how Godzilla should be. And some of that, I wonder if there was, because my understanding, there was actually some pushback on we don't want to make this kiddie. Like, we don't want this to be a kid's show. And so I wonder if that was some of the tonal shift we saw taking place, was some creative bickering within the production of it.
Well, I'm almost curious too, because I've heard two different sides of the story, to where there was a draft that was originally going to be Frankenstein versus King Kong, and then all that crap happened, and then they were trying to do a Godzilla versus Frankenstein movie as well in Japan before King Kong ever got into the picture. And so that's why you have like some of that weird like lightning makes Kong stronger subplots.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that was definitely weird.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, and I'm in the same place as you, because I did some digging trying to figure out what's actually happening here. There was a Frankenstein Conquers the World film that had him fighting a Godzilla-esque individual, but it wasn't necessarily. But it was at the same time. I was really confused by some of the stuff I was looking into and reading into it. So anybody who's like listening, I'm sure that Nathan's going to hear this at some point and holler back at us.
Yes.
Oh, I know what it is. Godzilla versus Baragon. Not Godzilla. Frankenstein versus Baragon was the one that came out. But I'm getting some conflicting, like, was that originally Godzilla? Are they renaming it? What's going on here? I was very confused.
Who's Baragon? What's Baragon?
It's another monster. Baragon was another monster. And it's a subterranean monster, apparently. And so I'm kind of with you on that, man. Now, I'll say this. It had a horn coming out of its head. Baragon has a horn.
It's a unicorn.
Yeah.
Sure. That's it. It's a unicorn. So.
Side note, my mind was blown when I discovered narwhals are real. Continue.
Random facts of the day.
Talking about animals with horns.
All right. So the tonal shifts. Celeste, was that an issue for you, or is there maybe something else that you struggled with?
So I had an issue with King Kong's suit. It was rough looking.
Yes.
It looked like he took a Sunday nap and then didn't take a shower after, because he was all kinds of messed up. That, and I'm not entirely sure what was with the armor plates that were supposed to be his pectoral muscles. Like, they were moving, they weren't even, and then they'd shift, and it was awkward. It was very awkward.
Budgetary restraints.
It was awkward.
It was awkward and terrible all at the same time. I'm going to fall with what I had issues with his suit, and I had issues with him as a character as a whole. The way that he ran, he did stuff. I was like, you're not really trying to act like a gorilla or a monkey. You're just running around with your arms flailing, like with Josh. Like, you know what his arms remind me of, Josh? You remember anybody when they were kids, they'd put their hands, the whole arm, into the tubes for the
to your heart like rate or something,
like the wrapping paper.
Oh,
the wrapping paper tubes.
What are you talking about?
Like, that's what it reminded me of, was like a 5-year-old going "Arrgh," like that.
I'm pretty sure at one point he really was holding 2x4s to extend his arms.
That's what it looked like. Like, I couldn't
really did.
Anytime he moved, it's like you're saying, Dallas, it's like he just did not they didn't care about how he moved. They're just like, just imitate a monkey. You know? And it just never felt like he kind of actually got there. But we're also spoiled by the genius of Andy Serkis and freaking Rick Baker with the Planet of the Apes movies.
Right. Well, I was watching a video a couple weeks ago in preparation for this, and they were talking about this film, and they said that the guy who played him, he was instructed specifically, hey, go watch some nature films, study how gorillas and apes move, and try to emulate those with the suit. And he's like, I don't care. I'm not going to do that. And apparently, the cost of getting King Kong and the amount of money this dude demanded for his paycheck for playing Kong is part of the reason why their budget was shot in the face.
He did not deserve whatever he got given.
That's my problem.
No.
Like, if you're getting paid that much, go watch some videos, dude.
Yeah, like it shows that he did not like watch it. Like maybe he made like an attempt, because like there are movements where like he's like, all right, I'm like kind of hunched, like my arms are hanging down a little bit low, but like it's never like he was like studying to like, I'm gonna disappear into this role.
Yeah,
exactly. He's like, I'm in a suit, I don't care. So now I did it for their benefit, awkward benefit. I'm told that the fight scenes between him and Godzilla, him and the guy who in the Godzilla suit actually choreographed those themselves. Like, they're the ones who are like, we'll plan this out, we'll do this. And like, they used popular wrestling at the time as their influence.
Big mistake. It shows that these fights were not choreographed. This scene, I don't know if you guys have ever seen the movie Blank Man. Mm-hmm. But there's a scene in Blank Man where Damon Wayans' character is like, for the first time, like stepping out to do being a hero or vigilante, and he's like stopping this like purse mugging or whatever, and Damon Wayans is like, slap me around and call me Susan. And so there's these alley guys literally just slap him around. And that's what these fights felt like to me. Like, they never felt like wrestling. It's just like two girls like fighting over like the last purse at like a Claire's.
I would maintain that fight that you just mentioned is actually more vicious.
Which one, the Blank Man or the Claire's?
Claire's.
You're probably not wrong.
Right?
Oh my gosh. All right, Josh, what's something else you didn't like, man?
Man, the fighting in this, like Godzilla and Kong, like I just did not like either one of these guys. Mm-hmm. Like I feel like there should be a problem when your best takeaway from a movie named after two iconic monsters battling. And that's not enough to catch your viewers' attention, but the subplot of all your humans are. Like, to me, like, I just did not find myself caring about these guys. Like, I never had that moment where I'm just like, come on, like, go for it. Kick him. Beat him. Like, it just, like, these fights were just, like, super dull to me.
All right, Celeste, how about you? What's something you didn't like?
I didn't care for the octopus. Okay. I understand that you said a bunch of things that made me feel guilty for not liking the octopus, because you're like, oh, they did all of these film things and they were doing stuff and boogity film magic, but it was just, I'm like, why is it flapping its head at them? Why? It's just like doing this Ursula thing, but badly. And so, and it makes sense that they were making it angry. It looked angry. It looked irritated. It looked like Mr. Feeney. But it just was not that Mr. Feeney looks like an octopus, but the octopus was channeling Mr. Feeney anyway. So it just was not a pleasant thing. That and the noise. The squishing noise was too much. I'm like, ugh.
Oh my gosh. I get it. I really do. All right. So for me, one of the things my last hand is like was, I get it. It's the 60s, but the lack of the plot line of how Godzilla was found on accident
right?
bugged me.
Like the military just lost track of which iceberg had Godzilla in it?
Exactly. Like that really bugged me. Like it was a major ordeal. And Josh, I don't know if you ever seen Godzilla Raids Again, but then it's a major fight at the end where they're literally bombing the heck out of a iceberg to bury Godzilla within it and to trap him with the ice. I mean, it's like a 5-minute or 10-minute scene of them just flying planes and shooting at the ice, trying to capture them. I'm like, why didn't nobody put a marker on this? Like, somebody should, like, put a flag, maybe a flag. Just put a flag on the ground so you know.
No flag,
that's
no
Godzilla.
country. That's how this works.
And then you have, like, this random ship, like, oh, what could that be? I don't know. It's like, that bugged me. Like, the lack of continuity from one film to the next.
Yeah.
Again, I totally get this is the 60s. They're not thinking about the way that we see things now as post MCU world mindset that we have, where we're making references to a film that's 20 years old and it has to be on point, or we're having revelation from a film from 20 years ago today. But that bothered me, is the lack of continuity. And knowing what I know about the next film in the franchise, which is Godzilla vs. Mothra, it sort of plays out, but it doesn't at the same time. And this one, he kind of falls into the ocean and he's there. And there's conversation like, did he die? Did he not die? There was an early script that was supposed to be Godzilla vs. Kong Part 2.
Yeah,
and
I didn't hear that.
Something revived, like there was a dead Godzilla and they revived him for that fight. But they nixed that one altogether. In Mothra, he's buried under some land, and you can maybe make you can make the claim that they had basically built some dams to clear the water area, so they could build up an area for basically a new highway, and that's how they found Godzilla. But at the same time, like, it's a little sketchy. So the continuity between films is kind of bothering me. But again, this is the 60s, so I'm trying to have grace for it. It just bugged me.
Yeah.
Can you really have grace for the 60s, like when you have a masterpiece like Psycho existing just a few years earlier and The Birds a year after this?
Not everybody can be Alfred Hitchcock.
That's fair.
That's the grace.
And Hitchcock was also, I mean, he was innovating certain things.
Yeah, he was.
Like, we emulate him today.
This film had a chance to innovate two monsters from two different cultures coming together. Nope.
I get it.
But you notice that Hitchcock never did a monster movie. Not that type of monster movie.
Nah. Man is the worst monster of us all.
All right, guys. Well, let's bring this plane crashing down like Godzilla's 2 feet into Kong's chest. Can we recommend this film? If we can, why? If we can't, why? So, Celeste, you first.
I'm going to say maybe.
Maybe?
If you're a completionist like you and I are, then sit through it and keep in mind, I think it's better than Godzilla Rides Again just because I was less bored. I was kind of bored during Godzilla Rides Again.
Rides Again?
Yeah, but that has more to do with the progression of the type of storytelling than it does with the actual movies. Because the movie, Godzilla Rides Again, I think was actually a better movie. It's just that type of storytelling doesn't catch my attention. So if you take into account where it's from, sure. If you don't, then I honestly wouldn't show this to anybody. I'm not going to be like, yeah, let's watch this. So take that for what you will.
I get it. Josh, Cats of Nostalgia.
I'm going to go hard no, with the exception if you're a cinephile or a completionist. Like Celeste said, like this movie, I don't know if you guys watched Mank on Netflix. It's the story of how Citizen Kane came to be. And Citizen Kane said to be one of the greatest movies of all time. And But as an example, when we did it last year on our show, we said that this is a movie for cinephiles. This is a movie for people that want a inside look into what 1930s and 40s Hollywood was really like. And that's kind of what I would say for King Kong versus Godzilla is, if you're going to watch it, first off, it has to be the Japanese version. And secondly, you have to know a little bit about Japanese culture. Because this gives you such a good snapshot of what the culture was like in 1962. Yeah. But you still have to kind of do some digging to like fully understand why things are the way that they are.
Yeah, you do.
I'm going to fall in line with you guys. Again, it's a dumb movie. And so, like, if you just want a dumb movie to throw in the background, it's there. But if you're going to watch it, I would say you probably need to be like everyone say, you need to be a cinephile. You need to be somebody that's just really into filmography. You need to be a completionist, probably, like I am, and then you can really enjoy it. You do have to, I would say though, Josh, with what you had to say about having to have an understanding about the time period and everything, I would say for today's generation, for those of us who are born from the 80s on forward, we almost have to work to have a cognitive idea of what life was back in the early 70s and 60s and 50s for any of those films, because we're so disconnected, especially today, so disconnected from what that world looked like and how that pans out. I was watching, what was that movie watching? I was watching Godzilla vs. Ghidorah, or Godzilla vs. the Three-Headed Monster, which is the first appearance of Ghidorah.
Yeah.
And they cut to a scene of a particular area in Tokyo, and I'm watching them, and there's this lady on the phone. I see the background, and I'm sorry, a particular city in Japan, and I've seen that intersection in other films, but it's so drastically different.
Oh yeah.
And life has changed so much for them in Japan, and it's happened here with movies here. And I watched there's a film called I think it's called By the Sword. Can't remember. It's a film that takes place in New York City. It's about fencing, and they show scenes in New York. And I've walked those very streets that they talked about, and it's completely different to when I walked them back in 2005 than they were in that film that was filmed back in the 80s. And so we had to have, when we watch these films, we had to have a little grace going into them, keeping those in mind. So I think that's it for those of us here at Geek at Com Talk. If you want to watch it, it's not a big deal. If you're, I would say that if you're going to watch Godzilla vs. Kong, if you can find a copy of it, even if it's just the American version, or if you want to go to archive.org and watch the Japanese version, just to see if you get the Easter eggs. That's a fun thing to play, is find the Easter egg.
I would say don't watch the American version at all.
It was really bad.
As bad as this one was, the American version was worse.
It was just disconnected, and like things just didn't make sense because they chopped out so much.
Yeah, it was bad. It was real bad.
Real quick, Josh, before we go, is there anything you want to promote with Victims and Villains? Anything you guys got coming up?
Much like you guys, I just want the listeners to know that you have value and that you have worth, and even if you've made it through this hour and change talking about a terrible movie, just know that you have value, and God loves you. I mean,
absolutely.
Bottom line. Only thing that I would say outside of that is if you need it, victimsandvillains.net/hope is our mental health resource library, where we have our goal is to reach people both with general population and niche groups alike. So we have all of that there for you guys.
Word. So check them out, guys. Josh is doing great stuff all the time. I have the great opportunity of being on Josh's Facebook as a kind of admin, mostly because he forgot to take me off his Facebook after I helped him. But I see messages coming into him all the time of people who just need help. just kind of walk through some stuff. And so I really appreciate all the things that Josh and his team does over there. Please reach out to them because he cares. Like, let's be real. He just cares. And we care about you. I've said this several times. I feel like I've said this several times over the last couple of weeks. If for whatever reason you only watch this because you connect with Josh Burkey, please go follow Josh Burkey. Follow Captain Nostalgia, Victims and Villains, and be part of that community. Maybe listen to this and you didn't like what I had to say about Kong versus Godzilla, but you liked what Josh had to say. Please stop following me and follow Josh, because I know he cares about you. Because I know that he knows that there's a plan and hope for your purpose, a plan and a hope and a purpose for your life. And we're all in this together to help you grow, to help you find your next step with God, to help you discover what God's called you to be. And we love you guys so very much. So that's all I got. Celeste, land this plane for us, dear.
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to Com Talk today. If you have loved this episode, head on over to Apple Podcasts to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. It is very much appreciated. So until next time, stay devoted.
Peace and love.